Hi, this is Dr. Victoria Andarcia again on the Healthful Roots podcast. Today I have Lauren Callahan with me, and I'm really excited to interview her after reading one of her books, Couch to 50 Miles. Lauren, can you please tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. Thanks for having me. So I have a business, Goddess Health, and I work with women primarily in midlife who have come to a point in life and they're feeling tired all the time, and they're going to their doctor often and hearing that everything is normal. And they know that everything is not normal, right? They're hitting a lot of walls when it comes to energy and sleep. Certainly their mood, feeling, like they've always been able to handle their stuff and are having a really hard time with anxiety and crying for what seems like no reason, right? I also work with a lot of athletes who are experiencing the same thing, right? Women in midlife who have traditionally been able to perform at a certain level, have a certain amount of energy, recover really well, and are all of a sudden having a really difficult time with that. And so I bring some very pervasive healing practices to them, primarily gut health and Reiki. Basically to heal from the inside out and get them back to a place where they have energy and can recover and feel like they are a decent human being and can be
Yeah.
kind to others, right? And enjoy their life again.
Yeah, I work with that population as well. And I feel like, especially with women, it can be complicated because there's so many factors that go into energy, right? The hormones, the gut health, like you
Yes.
mentioned. Um, and then aside from the gut health, is there any other testing that you do?
That is the only testing that I do. Yeah. And that is one of the first things that I do because it takes so much of the guesswork out. I feel like, we can easily spend all day long every day on Instagram and Google and whatever else, finding all of the good things that we can do for ourselves. And a lot of them are beneficial. But it's a lot of guesswork, right? So
Hmm.
one of the first things I do is we test 11 different gut metabolites. Takes about 90% of the guesswork out as far as healing your gut so that we don't have to guess. We know exactly where to go.
And what made you decide to focus on that?
Yeah, so such a great question. I was a therapist. And in the middle of being a therapist, I was also a runner. And I was struggling to run a marathon, and I struggled 4 years to run a marathon, and I'm kind of neurotic and driven, and I really wanted to run a marathon. And so I began hearing about gut health, and I got really curious about gut health and wondered, heard stories about athletes improving their gut health and the difference that it made and how it helped them recover better and not get repetitively injured. And it really didn't make sense in my mind. But the question that I kept coming back to was, I'm a decently healthy person. I eat well, I train. What if my gut is not healthy enough to receive the good things that I'm giving it?
Hmm.
And Dr. Victoria, that was one of the best things that I could have asked myself because, when I tested my gut, I found out it was actually in very poor shape, which really surprised me. So I spent the next 6 months really working to heal my gut. And after I did that, I did run my first marathon. And then I went on to run my first 50 miler. And then I did an Ironman. And then I did another 50 miler and another Ironman. And I did 100K all within 1 year. So certainly healing my gut, didn't just open doors, like it blasted through doors for me when it, came to my athletic performance and energy and my ability to recover. But honestly, the thing that really probably surprised me the most, in addition to finally being able to sleep again, um, like not having the digestive issues that I used to. Okay, all of those things were happening when I healed my gut. But the thing that probably surprised me the most was when I looked at my test results and saw that my serotonin levels were really, really low. And before this point, I had no idea that serotonin was even a gut metabolite,
Hmm.
right? And have since learned, 90% of your body's serotonin is actually produced in your gut. That's, in your natural state, like if you're not taking an SSRI or something. And so here I was, a therapist working to heal my own trauma every day and working every day to heal other people. And I have this major uphill battle with my mood, right? Because my serotonin is so low. And not just my mood. Serotonin is related to your ability to fall asleep at night, your digestion, right? Like it
Yeah.
initiates digestion. Um, so, once I did all this work to heal my gut. I mean, certainly that's an ongoing process, but I worked really hard in a short amount of time to do a lot there. I could see on paper that my serotonin went up. It went to exactly where it needed to be. And I didn't do anything except heal my gut. And, I could see it on paper, but experientially, I felt that, right? I felt the difference in my mood, my hormones, my sleep, all the things. And so, as far as why I got interested in this, I mean, I would go to the therapy office and love helping people all day long, with mindsets and, healing through trauma and all the things. But I wanted to say, what about your gut? Can we take a look at that?
Yeah.
And, it was just a little bit limited, right? In my scope of practice there. That is what began the shift for me.
Right. And I have one question on that because you mentioned that you couldn't understand the connection. So when you're working with women who come to you for performance, how do you explain, right? Because they might be coming to you, let's say like I want to run a marathon, and how can you help me? And you say I want to test your gut and see what's going on. They might be like, but wait, why? Right? Like my digestion is normal. Because I hear that a lot. People are like, my digestion is normal. But then you test them and you're like, no, this is not normal. So how do you help them make that connection?
Well, I would say at this point with what I do, the people that come to me have heard me talk and have heard my stories and have asked the questions, right? We've had conversations. And so by the time they start working with me, they know that that's what we're doing and that it's related, and they're curious enough that they want to go that road, right? So it's
Yeah.
never like a surprise. I start working with somebody and I say, hey, let's test your gut. They know from the get-go that that's what we're doing, that's number
Okay.
one,
That's
right?
good. That
First thing
must
we're
make
going
it a
to
lot easier because sometimes people are like, oh, I'm going through perimenopause. I'm like, let's look at your gut. And they're like, oh,
Yeah,
actually.
what does that have to do with anything, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. And, changing the subject, in the book, you there are a couple shifts that seem to happen, and one of the first shifts starts when you're doing yoga, but then later you describe running as playing a significant role with your spiritual practice.
Yeah.
So can you kind of describe how those two things kind of changed your mindset?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do have a history of trauma, right? And have spent a lot of my life, well, I want to say trying to heal from that. Honestly, I would say I spent a lot of my life trying to run from that, or tamp things down,
Mhm.
right? Push down maybe certain parts of me. And it wasn't really until I hit midlife, and I hear this from a lot of people, right? That doesn't work anymore, right? It just doesn't work. And so that was true for me too. And so by the time I arrived at the place where I started doing yoga, at that point, I mean, I had childhood trauma, but at that point, I'd lost my children. I had gone through a very traumatic divorce, and yes, talk about that in the book. And for those listening, I do have my children back, right? We have a very, very beautiful co-parenting, excuse me, a very beautiful co-parenting relationship at this point. Really, really good. But at the time it was horrible, right? So I mean, I can't describe how bottom of the barrel I was at that point in putting my life back together. But in the midst of that, I managed to get into a yoga training. And that experience with yoga taught me to love myself in a way that I had never known was okay. And in addition to that, to know to the core of my being that I am good and that people are good. I grew up with very different beliefs, and that was religious and cultural and family and generational. There were a lot of different things that went into that, but at the core of my being, I thought that it was bad. Right? I think a lot of people,
Yeah.
can resonate, right? Where you just think that you are awful to the core. And it was when I went through my yoga training that changed for me. I learned, no, I'm a valuable, beautiful, lovable, worthy human being and worthy of self-love. So that was a major shift for me. Later, you were asking about running. When I started running, it was originally because, I met the man who is my husband now, and he was training for a half marathon. And so I was like, he's cute. I'm going to train with him. Right. So that is really how it started. But it grew, right. It evolved. We ran together, and that was part of our, building our relationship. But we lived right next to a forest, and still do, Kisatchie National Forest. And we lived within a mile of trailheads. And so every day when I would train to run, I would just go out into the forest. And if it weren't for that, I don't know that I would still be running today. Like if I was just running through a city on pavement, I don't think I would have the same love for it. But it was being out in the forest. There is just something so healing about being out in nature in general. And I want to say the forest, I just have a particular love for the forest. But truly, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, it is such a healing experience
Yeah.
to be out there. And I think being out there so much taught me to listen, in a sense, to the forest and to connect with this, to connect with myself, but to connect with a greater self as well.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I used to run. I'm gonna do a half marathon in December, but I remember telling one of my meditation teachers that I didn't need to meditate because I would run, right? And she was like,
Yeah.
"No, no, you still need to meditate." But I really felt like it was the only place where you can just like let it all go, right? And like nothing mattered if I was running. So when you said that, I was
Yes.
just like, okay, I was interested in that. And have those two things influenced how you coach now?
Oh my God, absolutely. Yes. Yes, definitely. I probably bring, one of the most compassionate approaches to my coaching that, most people will experience, right? I think a lot of people come, I mean, they're ready for change, right? Like if
Yeah.
somebody signs up with me, they are ready for change, right? They are about to invest 4 months of their life into, I mean, certainly like finances and energy, right? Into change, and they're ready. And along with that comes this determination that like, no matter what it takes, I'm going to get rid of the parts of me that are not helping, right? do,
Mhm.
do all the things. And actually, in my experience, this is personal experience, therapy experience, coaching experience. Actually, when you turn toward all the parts of you that seem to be getting in your way, right? All the frustrating things, maybe, habits that you have, or the emotional reactivity that you have, or physical pain or experiences or difficulties, right? When you can actually turn toward those things with the utmost compassion, that truly is where healing starts. When you can love yourself instead of I've just got to you know maybe, for example, that part of me that really wants to binge on Cheetos or smoke or, whatever, right? Like I've had clients there too. Like I just need to, show that part of me what's what. And like, they're going to,
Yeah.
sit down and not say anything. And I'm going to do the things that are good for me. That's a very like valiant attitude. But in my experience, when you can actually be incredibly compassionate to those parts of you that are not quite on board with, being healthy and doing the good things, that is actually the most powerful healing thing that you can do for those parts of you. And you would be surprised at how they will become aligned with the rest of you, right? The parts of you that dig in their heels and, frustrate you, they will, when they are loved compassionately, right? They come around, if that makes sense, right? They want to be in line with, you living your healthiest, most vibrant kind of life.
Yeah. And do you think that you have to understand why those habits exist, or do you think just being compassionate is enough?
Yes and no. That is such a great question. I think that's one I could talk all day long on, so I'll try to be concise. Um, yes and no. So I think that awareness is beautiful, but I think that there's a certain level of trying to figure something out that does not benefit us. Right.
Mm.
We're smart people, and we tend to think if we can figure out the reasoning and just be ultra self-aware, that we can figure it out and fix it. And I think a certain level of that is great. And then there's a
Yeah.
certain level of that that's too much. And that's because you have certain parts of you, and I'm very much using parts language. This was, the therapy model that I was trained in, and I use it still in coaching. I use it for daily life. It's a way of being for me. But, you very much have parts of you that can be very childlike. They can get stuck. In the past, sometimes,
Mhm.
depending on your experiences, right? Um, Especially when something maybe hasn't been resolved, or you didn't receive the love and nurturing that you needed to at that moment, right? A part of you can stay stuck there. And if when you were 10, for example, or when you were 20 or 30,
Yeah.
a part of you got stuck because you didn't receive, the compassion and care and loving and nurturing that maybe you needed in that moment. Um, it's almost like that part of you is the same age, right? Like
Yeah.
if something happened when you were 10, like your parents divorced and didn't talk to you about it, everybody was hush hush, and you're a 10-year-old trying to figure it out, right? Like a 10-year-old has emotions and thoughts around that and has questions. And if people don't handle that well, then, there are things that are unresolved. If there's a part of you that is in a sense stuck there, well, that one part of you has the emotions and experience of a 10-year-old. Can you imagine just standing there and trying to figure out and reason, and speak logically to a 10-year-old today? No, sometimes they just need a hug, right? So
Yeah.
bringing it back around to your question of, do you have to understand it fully, or is it enough to send compassion? A level of awareness is really great. But sometimes I really think the more healing thing is for you just to send compassion to those parts of you. And what I'd add to that is, in my experience with Reiki, Reiki is an energy healing practice that heals and balances on all levels and allows your body mind to release stored energy that is not for its highest good.
Mm.
And one of the things that I love about Reiki is that sometimes you're aware of that releasing and sometimes you're not. Sometimes you have no clue. So you really don't have to figure that out. You really can just be open and receive that healing, that Reiki healing, and not have to be smarty pants and know what's going on.
Okay. I like that. Yes. And I'm guessing that you got certified in Reiki. That wasn't in your first book.
Yes, that was actually posted. that shows up in the second book, but it's not in the first one.
Okay. No, that's very cool. I've always wanted to get certified. It keeps coming up, so maybe I should do it. And when you first started it, did you start it for yourself? Like, was it self Reiki that you started, and then now you use it for your clients?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That was purely a curiosity thing, and I would say that I actually felt the same way that you just described. Like, it kept coming up for me, and I'm always interested and very open to different healing modalities. So, I was curious enough. And as you read in my first book, when I'm curious about something, I go and get certified in it. So actually my first Reiki experience was part of the certification process. Like, I was
Oh,
getting
wow. So you just like
attuned
went right
to,
in.
yeah, I immediately was attuned to Reiki energy, which is part of the certification process, getting attuned to
Yeah.
Reiki. And so that's how I started, and just began practicing Reiki on myself near daily. I do it almost every day, because I truly believe if you're going to give it to other people, if you want to heal the world, you heal yourself first, right?
Mm. Yeah, I love
So
that.
yeah, so
That
I
leads
do it on myself.
perfectly into one of my questions, actually.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So in the book, you talk about your family a lot. You have a large family. If I remember correctly, it was 7 kids. Like,
Yeah.
all right. But yeah, in your book, you're talking a lot about like training for your first marathon and the Ironmans, and then you had a 50-mile run, and then you were working your way up to like a 100-kilometer run, right?
Hmm.
Um, but meanwhile, your family was either there supporting you or you were present with your family. And a lot of my clients struggle with making time for themselves. So, how did you navigate this, or how do you navigate this?
Yeah, so I'll give the version that shows up a little more in the first book, and then I'll share with you what I put in the second book, because I spent a lot of time on this in my second book, Powerful Not Tired. In the first book, my kids were a lot younger, right? So that it definitely looked different than it did now. And what I will tell you is that as an athlete, I am continually a back of the packer. I'm usually, finishing near the end and often struggling to make cutoff times. And I would say part of that is because I do the training that makes sense for me in my life and with my kids and to take care of myself. And it means that it's not like the best training in the world, right? Like I rearrange things so that they're maybe not the best, as far as like, typical training standards, but it's just what I can do, right? Because my kids and my family are so important to me. My kids and my family are important to me, and also my self-care is important to me, right? Like I, for different races have tried different things. At one point it was, well, if you're going to train for this race and you're going to do it, and still be a mom throughout the day, then you just got to wake up early and do it. Well, I felt terrible because I wasn't getting sleep and I was like a mean person.
Yeah.
Hopefully I wasn't mean, but I didn't like how I felt, and I didn't like my attitude, and didn't feel like I was being as present as I wanted to be, like as a mom and wife and all the things. And so, there's a point where I said, forget this, I need to get sleep, right? So I changed up my training to where I always, where possible, I got, an absolutely full night's sleep, would wake up just whenever I woke up, right? Without setting an alarm. That's not an everyday, that's sometimes where that works. But, so that's, and then I would just make training work somehow, hopefully. So, so does, the a training plan become a little bit subpar? Yeah. But it was important to me to take care of myself and be there for my family. My kids are older now. So that does look differently. Like I can train better in a sense, than maybe I used to, and they can come along in different ways, than they used to. The thing in the end that I have landed on is what I ended up calling the goddess first principle. And the name for that comes in part because like my business is Goddess Health, right? And that's just the
Mhm.
idea that, you are powerful and perfect exactly as you are. And it just breaks my heart when I talk to women and they're like, I'm so tired and stressed all the time and I feel terrible. And I think
Yeah.
that is not the life of a goddess, right? And so that's what I love helping do in my business, like helping women just feel like a goddess again, with their health and energy. But the goddess first principle, where that really came from, there's a book called Profit First. Have you ever heard of it?
Mm-mm.
No? Okay. And it's by a guy named Mike, something I can't pronounce, starts with an M. And so I'll derail just for a minute to give you the gist of his idea in his book. It's, a business book, right? And his idea was that if I asked you, what is profit? You would likely say something like, well, profit is your income minus your expenses equals whatever you have left over is profit. And what I realized along the way, in both therapy and in the coaching world, is that we as women in particular, we tend to look at our self-care in the same light. So we start off with our time and energy that we have throughout the day, minus whatever we have to do for other people and our
Mhm.
responsibilities and all the to-dos, equals whatever we have left over is what we have for our self-care. And
Yeah.
as you know, like how does that look by the end of the day, right? Like there's not much left over. So Mike in his book Profit First, what he said is that for a business to be profitable, it has to change that formula to your income minus whatever you take out first for your profits equals whatever you have left over for your other expenses. So my disclaimer is that I've never actually read the book. I've just spent time with a coach, and like that is the extent of my knowledge. And he says that it works. So like, if you want to go read the book, read the book. But I loved the idea for us as women when it comes to our self-care. If we are going to live our healthiest, happiest, most vibrant, thriving lives, if we're going to live as a goddess, right, we have to change that formula to our time and energy that we start with minus what we put toward our self-care first
Mhm.
equals whatever we have left over for everything and everybody else. Now, what I'm not advocating is that like we neglect our children,
Right.
obviously. But I think, but I can say that because for one thing, I know that we all know intuitively what we need for our self-care. And that totally looks different for everybody. Like whether you're a mom with a newborn or you've got a 20-year-old or you have no kids, right? Like it looks differently for everybody. And truly at your core, like, what it is that you need and how that works for your family. But the other thing that I know, and what I've seen this over and over again with, with myself and with my clients, is that when you do it this way, that you actually are changing the equation from a subtraction one to an addition one. It is no longer like minus, your self-care equals whatever you have left over. It is, your time and energy plus what you give toward yourself for self-care equals now you have exponentially more to give to everybody else. One of my clients who, she got this lesson and she got it better than I did. She's really good. And she has young children and a husband that she loves and a very, very demanding job. It's not like she just has all the time in the world, right? On paper, she had no time for self-care, but she knew that this was important. And we made it important, and we worked together for this to be like a priority in her life. And she came back to me and she said, Lauren, I now am so much more present for my kids. I'm so much more present for my husband. I am so much more present, and I'm better at what I do at work. And that was because she made her self-care a priority.
I love that. And I think that's so important to highlight, like you're highlighting with this client, is that it helps you show up better for other people. Yeah. Right. And I've seen that a lot too in my practice. And I think it's hard for people to understand at first. Right. They get like overwhelmed by just thinking that they have to do like more, but you're not doing more. It's just it ends up helping you in the end. So thank you. Exactly. I think that's beautiful. And one of the things that I was going to ask you, and this is about your practice, because now like we've hit on a couple of different things. It's like your spiritual practice and your training and your time management. But let's say I came to you and I wanted to work with you. How does that look? What does your like model look like?
Yeah, so I work with people over a 4-month period. And again, one of the first things that we do is we're gonna test your gut health, right? So that we take out a lot of the guesswork. We know exactly where your gut is at and what we need to do, right? So when we test your gut, I work with a registered dietitian to get the recommendations for how you, like as an individual, can improve your gut health, right? Not just a bunch of general principles, but you specifically and what you need. And so then over the next 4 months, we make that a reality. And part of that is because I have found over and over again that if I just say, okay, here's what you need to do and set somebody loose, it's ineffective. Like I wish I could say it works, and it just never does. And so I don't do it. And so I work with people over that 4-month time and meet with them regularly, right? To help them make it a reality in their life. And maybe as an example of that, to really show the importance of that, I've worked with some people that, there were definitely, item 1, 2, 3 that they could do to really improve their gut health. But actually number 4, was their stress level was way too high. Right. And that actually shows up like way more than you would expect when it comes, maybe not more than you'd expect, but it comes up a lot with gut health. And so, this is where we have to remember, like, we're human beings, we're not robots. So I can't just tell you, okay, you need to go include more fiber in your diet. It's usually something a little bit more than that, and takes a lot of love and care and nurturing. So over the next 4 months, we work to help, you make very sustainable step-by-step changes that will last you for the rest of your life as far as healing your gut. And then also in that process, I'm going to do Reiki sessions with you as well. Personally, and this was why I originally added Reiki to my business practice. When I began practicing Reiki, I had done the work to heal my gut. And I mean, that's an ongoing process for sure. That never stops. But, but I'd done a lot of work, right? To heal my gut. I could tell you for an entire year, my bathroom trips were perfect every time. It was that good, right? In addition to all the other things, like being able to sleep and having a better mood and better energy and recovery and low inflammation and all that. But when I started practicing Reiki, one of the first things that I experienced was a gastrointestinal detox. And this happens for some people. They experience detox-like symptoms. And I thought, well, what in the world? Like, what am I detoxing from? Right? I couldn't tell you. And I also didn't need to know. It's what we kind of talked about earlier, right? Like, Reiki allowed my body mind to release whatever stored energy and toxins that it needed to
Mhm.
release. Um, and then in addition, right, like I experienced such amazing freedom with my mood that, like, with depression, anxiety, and panic attacks, that I had not known was possible. Like, it had gotten worlds better once I healed my gut. But then once I introduced Reiki, like I couldn't imagine the amount of freedom that was possible. And so this is what I add into my practice now as well, just regular Reiki sessions. And then at the end of 4 months, we retest your gut so we know where you're at and what is working, what's not working, what needs to be improved. How do we set you up for success moving forward?
I love that. And then if they are doing like any training for any athletic events, you incorporate that in there as well then?
Yes, yeah. Training and exercise is always included in there. First of all, because it is essential for a healthy gut and a healthy
Mhm.
lifestyle. So it will always be included in some form.
Okay.
And then, yeah, for my athletes, I have been a certified triathlon coach. I am a certified ultra running coach, as a certified personal trainer. So yeah, like the people who are training for a specific event, we include that in there as well. So it really does look different for everybody, but some
Okay.
element of like movement and exercise, as well as you asked about the yoga earlier, do I incorporate that? Like, yes, yoga and mindfulness and all kinds of practices that will reduce inflammation.
Yeah.
Because, God, as you know, like, um, inflammation for women in midlife, oh my God, like this is an uphill battle for us. And so, and this is very strongly related to your gut health. So we do a lot of things to, help reduce inflammation.
Okay. And I was like, that was a leading question because I think it's so important for people to realize that when you're healing, it's not just one thing, right?
Mm.
There's like so much that comes into it. And even when you're talking about the Reiki and how you detox, I think that a lot of emotions, a lot of stress gets stuck in our body. Like I used to have IBS, and then later, through my practice, I realized it wasn't IBS. That's just how my body managed anxiety for me.
Oh God, yes,
Um,
yes.
so then I feel like there's just so many things that sometimes people don't realize. Like you do have to deal with your stress, how you're eating because of the inflammation, and aging is inflammaging, right? The joint
Oh
pain and
yeah,
all
that's
the
good.
things that that you
Yeah.
get, right? Like all of this contributes. So when you're going to heal, I think sometimes you're gonna get in a little bit deeper than you initially set out to, because so many things are connected here.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that came up for me too that I just wanted to throw in because of what you said about um however you put it, but like mental and emotional experiences, like living in our body in a very physical way, right? Like with you, it was IBS for one, right? And there were probably other ways too.
Yeah.
Um, that was another thing when I first started practicing Reiki. Um, this is one of those things. Everybody experiences Reiki differently, right? But some people will dream, and that is just a way of your body mind, again, releasing stored energy that is not serving your highest good. When I started practicing Reiki, and I remember I immediately was attuned and I began practicing Reiki every day, I can say for 3 months straight, I dreamed nearly every single night, which was definitely not my experience. I mean, I know we all dream and we just tend to not remember most of it. But every single night I woke up remembering the dreams that I'd had. And of course, sometimes they were just, as dreams do, where you're like, what was that, right? It
Yeah.
didn't make any sense. But a lot of the time, it was definitely connected, to some kind of emotional or mental energy or memory or something like that. My deepest fears, like that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And I could wake up and not feel attached to them and just know it was a dream, and my body mind, it was processing that
Hmm.
energy and releasing it from my body, and now it's just not there anymore, right? Which was such a
Yeah.
beautiful experience, right? Because like you said, like all of those um, mental and emotional energy lives in our body in a very physical way and shows up in very random ways that seem unconnected,
Yeah.
such as IBS, right? But it is all connected.
Yeah. It is all connected. Yeah, no, I love that. And actually, I'm going to go sign up for Reiki as soon as we're done, the
Yay, that's so
certification.
exciting.
Yeah, but so if you don't mind, there was a paragraph. I mean, I highlighted and I took like on this book, but there was a paragraph that like really stood out, and I wanted to show that, like, share it with everyone because I thought it was so beautiful. And it was in chapter 7, and you said, "True living involves way more than intellectualizing it. It involves experiencing it, living it with your body, heart, and soul. And when your body isn't moving, your life and your energy are stunted." I thought that was so beautiful because, you mentioned it early on, but it's how we tend to intellectualize things too much rather than just living life. And I think that we get kind of stuck in, the rat race or the day to day. And I feel like we forget to live in our body. And I just thought that that was really beautiful and I wanted to share it. I mean, there were so many things, but that was the one I picked.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, that was a really beautiful lesson for me, especially, as you know from the book, I grew up with um, my intellect being the thing that was prized, right? Which
Mhm.
totally makes sense. My parents grew up in poverty and, moved up to middle class, right? I mean, extreme poverty, right? Like my mom, her family, they were farmers and in Oklahoma, so so to them, being able to do well in school was like the ticket, to success in life. But that in addition to, other things that were going on in my home, in the end, the only thing that was pleasing was for me to do well in school. And so I took that on and learned that, spending my life sitting at a desk and being smart and thinking, through everything was the way to go. And not only that, I would say on the level, for like mental and emotional healing, I mentioned earlier, like self-awareness, right? I When you are a product of trauma, one effect of that is that you learn to assess everything around you. And that's a safety mechanism, right? So you learn to very quickly be aware of what other people are thinking, what their mood is, how you need to respond, the best way for you to act, the best thing for you to say, so that you will be received um, nicely, right? Like that you will be, addressed or received in a safe way, right? That feels good to you, where you feel loved and cared for and safe, right? So you learn to overthink every damn thing, right?
Yeah.
And so those two things together, right, caused me to just, be an overthinker and, use my intellect for everything, right? So the experience of later in life, coming into yoga, beginning to run, beginning to strength train. Oh my God. Like, wow. What an amazing experience of just being in your body and
Hmm.
learning what you can do, and that you are more than your mind, right? That you are emotions and you are a body, a physical body. And all of those things require, the same love and attention, um, just as much, at least, love and attention as you've been giving your mind all this time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's really important for people to hear. Well, it's been lovely, this podcast interview. I was really looking forward to it, so I'm glad that we made it happen. And for anyone who wants more information on how to work with you or your website, can you share those details?
For sure. Yeah. So my website is goddesshealth.org, and that is where you can get a copy of my newest book, Powerful Not Tired. I also have another website, laurenbcallahan.com, where you can find out a little bit more about, working with me and what that actually looks like.
Okay. And then do you have an Instagram or no?
I do. Yeah. Lauren B. Callahan.
Okay, perfect. So I'll add that to the show notes for anyone who is wanting to look you up in that way. And Lauren, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I thought your first book was great. So Powerful, Not Tired will be the next one that I go for. So thank you so much for your time
Awesome. Thank
today.
you for having me. I've really enjoyed this.
Thank you.